Hey everyone, ready for another deep dive. This time, we're tackling those Leopard tanks headed to Ukraine.
Yeah, there's a lot of buzz going around, right?
Oh, absolutely. People are really fired up about whether these Cold War era machines are actually going to make a difference.
Right, like are they just a symbolic gesture? Or can they actually hold their own on a modern battlefield?
Well, we've got a super interesting Forbes article that dives deep into the specs of these Leopard 1A5s.
And to get a feel for what people are really saying, we're also diving into a Reddit thread that is absolutely on fire with opinions.
And here's the thing that kind of blew my mind. Get this. Ukraine's actually getting more of these older Leopard ones
Than the modern Leopard 2.
than all the new stuff combined. Leopard 2s, Abrams, Challengers, you name it.
Wow, that's a lot of Leopard 1s.
So let's break it down. What exactly are we dealing with here? What is a Leopard 1A5?
So picture this. It's the 1980s.
Okay, leg warmers, big hair.
Exactly. And on the battlefield, you've got this 40-ton beast of a tank rolling around.
40 tons. That's pretty hefty.
It is. And it's packing a 105-millimeter gun.
Decent firepower for its time, I'd imagine.
Oh, definitely. It's even got a pretty decent fire control system.
There's got to be a butt here, right?
Well, yeah. Compared to something like an Abrams.
Like the gold standard, yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely lighter. And that means less armor.
Ah, okay, so not exactly a modern-day fortress on tracks.
Quite.
But the Ukrainians are known for, being incredibly resourceful. Are they doing anything to try and beef these things up?
Oh, absolutely. They're adding reactive armor to try to bolster that protection a bit.
Smart.
And they're also throwing on some anti-drone netting.
Oh, yeah, trying to stay ahead of those drones, right?
We've got to. Makes a big difference on the modern battlefield.
For sure. But before we get too deep into the upgrades, I gotta ask, that Reddit thread was jam-packed with people saying tanks are straight up obsolete these days.
Yeah, I saw some of those comments.
Drones, missiles, all that. Are tanks even relevant anymore?
It's a debate that's been going on forever.
It feels like it.
But this conflict is really bringing it to the forefront.
Because we're seeing it play out in real time.
Exactly.
Oh.
And yeah, there's no denying it. Tanks are big targets, expensive to produce, expensive to operate.
And if you're caught out in the open...
Sit and duck. Especially against, modern anti-tank weapons.
But on the other hand, there's still something about a tank, right?
Oh, yeah. Like, psychologically. Nothing messes with an enemy like seeing a tank rolling towards you.
True.
And in terms of just raw firepower.
Punching through defenses.
Oh, yeah. Pushing through enemy lines, clearing out bunkers, trenches. There's nothing else quite like it.
There's a reason they call it the king of the battlefield, right?
Yeah, exactly. But
Yeah.
Here's the thing about Ukraine and these Leopard ones. They're mainly using them to equip new heavy brigades.
Oh, okay. So not necessarily leading the charge in a massive armored offensive?
Not quite.
Interesting. So what more of a supporting role then?
That seems to be the strategy, yeah. Think holding defensive lines, providing cover for infantry advances.
Harassing supply lines, maybe?
Potentially, yeah. Hit-and-run tactics.
Mm-hmm.
But probably not spearheading those massive armored pushes that we've, seen in the past.
Gotcha. So then it makes you wonder why so many Leopard 1s? Is it just a matter of, availability? They're just easier to get a hold of?
Partly, yeah. The Forbes article made that point. Newer tanks are in high demand globally, and everyone's waiting in line. But there's also a tactical reason that's pretty interesting.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Lay it on me.
The Leopard 1, as old as it is, actually has a pretty good power-to-weight ratio.
Oh, interesting. So even though it's not the heaviest tank out there,
It's got some pep in its step.
more mobile than you'd think.
Exactly, especially compared to some of the heavier, more modern tanks.
So they're trading some armor for speed and maneuverability.
Exactly. And in a conflict like this, that could be a real advantage.
Definitely. The Ukrainians need to be able to react quickly,
Yeah.
shift positions.
Avoid getting bogged down.
Exactly. You don't always need a heavyweight champ if a nimble welterweight can get the job done right.
Right. But there are some drawbacks to that lighter design,
Mm-hmm.
especially when it comes to
Ammunition.
bingo.
Yeah, the Reddit thread was exploding with talk about that. Something about having to withdraw to reload.
Yeah, it's not ideal. The Leopard 1's turret has limited ammo storage.
Right.
So to reload, they've got to back out of the fight.
Which can leave them exposed.
Exactly. Disrupts their momentum, leaves them vulnerable. Not a great situation to be in.
Not ideal at all. But hey, at least the crews are getting some seriously diverse training on all this different equipment.
Oh, yeah. Someone in the Reddit thread even called them the most well-rounded tank crews in the world.
And I can see why. They're learning to operate a real mix of stuff,
Western and Soviet-era tanks.
facing all kinds of challenges.
It's an incredible learning experience.
For sure. But even with all that training, how are these Leopard 1s actually holding up? I mean, are they really making a difference out there?
It's hard to get reliable data.
Sure.
But the Forbes article mentioned that out of the first batch of 58 sent to Ukraine,
Okay.
only 6 have been confirmed destroyed.
That's not bad at all.
Especially considering what they're up against.
Right. Some pretty serious firepower out there.
No kidding.
So maybe we shouldn't be so quick to dismiss these older tanks.
I agree. This whole conflict is really making us rethink what effective even means in modern warfare.
Well, and speaking of rethinking things, one of the most interesting points I saw in that Reddit thread was this comparison of tanks to aircraft carriers.
Oh, yeah, saw that one.
They're both big, expensive, obvious targets,
Yeah.
but they're still vital assets.
And they're not going away anytime soon.
So are we witnessing the twilight of the tank era?
Or are these machines just evolving to meet new challenges?
That's the big question, isn't it? And to really unpack that, I think we need to zoom out a little bit.
Look at the broader context.
Exactly. How is this conflict shaping military thinking, globally? What does it mean for the future of armored warfare?
Lots to unpack there.
Let's get into it.
This whole "are tanks obsolete" thing, it reminds me of something someone said in that Reddit thread. They were comparing tanks to, get this, medieval knights.
Medieval knights. Okay, I'm listening.
So, we don't always picture knights just charging into battle, swords blazing, right?
There is more to it than that.
Exactly. Tanks are kind of the same way. They've got different roles in the battlefield.
So even if the Leopard 1s aren't, leading the charge in Ukraine,
They can still be valuable.
in the right context.
Yeah, exactly. And the Ukrainians seem to get that. They're not trying to make these older tanks do something they're not meant for.
They're playing to their strengths.
Exactly. Mobility, accuracy, and let's not forget that psychological factor.
Oh, for sure. Seeing a tank coming at you, that's got to mess with your head.
Big time. And speaking of adapting, you see some of those comments in that Reddit thread. People are getting pretty creative.
Oh, yeah. Some wild ideas in there.
Someone even suggested a tank with a built-in drone operator station.
I saw that, like a little mini aircraft carrier on land.
Right.
Yeah.
Pretty wild. But it does show how drones are changing everything. Right?
Oh, yeah. And how militaries are trying to, integrate them into existing platforms.
Exactly. Imagine a tank launching its own recon drones, identifying targets.
Calling in airstrikes.
Yeah, a mobile command center.
Pretty cool concept.
Definitely. Might not be battlefield ready just yet.
But it's a sign of what's coming.
For sure. That line between, traditional combat roles, it's getting blurry.
And the future of warfare is probably going to be way more, integrated, right?
Oh, yeah. Multidimensional. It's not just tanks versus tanks anymore.
So what else is coming? What other innovations do you think we might see coming out of this conflict?
It's hard to say. But you know what they say? Necessity is the mother of invention, right?
For sure.
And the Ukrainians, they're proving that every single day. Modifying civilian drones for military use.
Developing new tactics for urban warfare.
They're constantly finding ways to outmaneuver a much larger and better equipped enemy.
It's almost like they're running this massive field test, right?
Totally. Pushing the limits of existing tech, coming up with creative solutions on the fly.
It's pretty remarkable.
And you can bet that militaries around the world are paying attention, taking notes.
Learning from this conflict.
Absolutely. It's a wake-up call for anyone who thought,
That tanks were the thing of the past.
Yep, they're not going anywhere.
There was one comment in the thread that really stuck with me. Someone said, the best defense is just avoiding getting shot in the first place.
Words to live by, right? Especially on a battlefield.
But how do you actually do that when,
Yeah.
you've got drones and all these other threats?
Well, it comes down to a few things. Training, tactics, and of course, technology.
Right. Got to have all the pieces working together.
Exactly. Ukrainian tank crews, they're learning to use terrain to their advantage.
Coordinate their movements.
Anticipate enemy attack.
And make every shot count.
Yeah, no wasted rounds. And they're using all kinds of countermeasures, too.
Electronic jamming systems, camouflage netting.
Trying to stay off those drones' radar.
It's a constant cat and mouse game.
It is. High-stakes chess match, almost.
Speaking of which, someone in that thread brought up the possibility of Ukraine developing their own like bolt-on active protection systems for their tanks.
Oh, yeah, that's an interesting idea.
Could be a game changer, right?
Potentially,
Yeah.
yeah. We're talking about systems like the Israeli trophy system. They detect and intercept incoming projectiles.
So it's like creating a protective bubble around the tank.
Exactly. Could make a huge difference in survivability, even for those older models,
So instead of relying on reactive armor,
which is, basically a one-time use.
right,
You've got a system that can take down multiple threats, RPGs, anti-tank missiles.
that could change everything, huh?
It could, yeah. Not just for Ukraine, but for tank warfare, period.
Wow. Makes you wonder what other innovations might come out of all this.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
Yeah.
But one thing's for sure.
This war is pushing things forward.
Absolutely. It's like an accelerated evolution of warfare.
And it's making everyone rethink their strategies, their equipment, their whole approach to training.
It's a whole new world out there.
Yeah, it really feels like this conflict in Ukraine is kind of like a crucible, forging new tactics, new tech,
Yeah.
and new ways of thinking about warfare,
It
too.
really is. And I think what's so fascinating is that, Ukraine, they're outgunned, outmanned,
Yeah.
but they're proving that adaptability, innovation, those things can be just as powerful as, like, raw firepower.
It's about brains over brawn sometimes, right?
Exactly. And I think that brings me back to something I saw in that Reddit thread. Someone was saying that the Ukrainians, they're showing the world that you don't necessarily need, like,
No.
the most advanced weapons to be effective. It's about using what you have intelligently,
Yeah.
creatively, and, like, always staying one step ahead of your opponent.
I like that. It's a good reminder.
Yeah. And I think it also highlights,
What?
the human element. We tend to focus on the hardware, the big tanks, the fancy missiles.
Right.
But ultimately, it's the people, the training, the tactics, that sheer determination,
Yeah.
to fight for what they believe in. That can make all the difference.
So even in the 21st century, with all this tech, with drones and AI and all that,
Warfare is still fundamentally human.
that's a good point. It's easy to forget that sometimes.
Definitely. Technology is evolving so fast, but at the end of the day, it's about the people on the ground, making decisions, taking risks, showing courage. We're
Yeah.
seeing that play out in Ukraine every single day.
Yeah, absolutely. Individual courage, ingenuity, resilience.
It's making a difference.
It really is. Just scrolling through that Reddit thread, I was honestly really impressed by how much people knew about this stuff and the range of perspectives they brought, too.
Oh, yeah. This is a really lively discussion.
It wasn't just like pro-tank versus anti-tank. There was actual nuance.
I agree. It's a complex issue, and I think those diverse viewpoints, they really helped paint a fuller picture.
For sure. It's a good reminder that even when things get heated,
Yeah.
there's always room for thoughtful analysis, for considering different perspectives.
And that's something we should all strive for, right? Not just when we're talking about military stuff, but in any situation where we're trying to, like, make sense of a complex world.
Totally. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, huh? From the nitty-gritty details of the Leopard 1.
All the way to the future of warfare.
Exactly. Any final thoughts you want to leave our listeners with?
I think if I had to sum it all up, the big takeaway for me is adaptability.
Adaptability.
The Ukrainians, they're showing us what's possible when you're willing to adapt, to innovate, to never give up. And that's a lesson that's relevant to everyone, I think, not just, military folks.
Totally. It's about finding a way even when the odds are stacked against you.
Exactly.
So to our listener, we say, stay curious, keep asking questions, and never underestimate the power of,
Human ingenuity.
human resilience. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.